Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Kim and Laurie Show. Today, we are presenting Heather from New Jersey. She came to one of our Zoom dating events, and we were very impressed with her. I reached out to Heather and asked her if she would share her do's and don'ts of dating from the singles perspective. Kim and I haven't heard her list yet, so we may agree, we may disagree, but that will make it interesting. So we're going to turn the floor over to Heather and see what she has to say. Heather, welcome.
Hi, thank you for inviting me. This by no means is halacha. It's just my experience and having spoken to a lot of women, some of the things that they appreciate and things they would like to see change.
Thank you. I know you're really brave to do this, and we really appreciate you sharing. I know it can't be easy. So let's hear. I'm so interested in your list.
Okay. I like to start with the positives, with the do's. I'll speak for myself, and what I've heard from other women is people like to know that the person they're speaking to is curious to know them. Asking tentative questions, open-ended questions. How do you feel about this? What do you think of this? It really shows that they care about me as a person and getting to know who I am. And on the flip side of that, I would say take care about revealing less about yourself and letting someone draw it out of you and ask questions. It's okay to speak a little bit about yourself, briefly, but let there be a little bit of a give and take. The person can ask you questions about yourself. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's clear.
That was really clear. Kim, did you have anything you wanted to say on that one?
Yeah, I think it's a great point, Heather. The one thing I'm thinking about is that it could be that they don't know what is okay to be asking. So because they don't know exactly what's okay to be asking, for some things it is okay, I think, to share even if someone isn't being asked, because the other person might not know, is this something that they can be asking? Is it too much to be asking? Whereas if you proactively share it, then they know you're okay with that topic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think it's the most important thing in dating, what you're saying, Heather. The most important thing is to learn how to ask questions. You said open-ended. I like to say just an open-ended question is a question that invites a story.
Absolutely.
So you don't ask somebody, how many brothers and sisters do you have? Because you're going to get a one-word answer. So you can say, tell me about your brothers and sisters. Do you have a favorite? And then they tell you their favorite. Tell me why this one's your favorite. So ask questions that invite a story. I think it's the number one dating tip. I'm so glad you brought it up. Now we're ready for number two.
Yeah, I was just going to quickly add, Heather, I'm glad you brought that up too, because like Laurie said, one of the most important things is that people find the date fun and that they're enjoying themselves. And by having both the man and woman pre-prepared open-ended questions, it really helps facilitate an interesting, fun conversation.
That was part of what I was thinking is, take a look at their profile or things you had wondered about, on the phone through conversations. It shows that you've been listening and say, I remember you were talking about this. I think it's the quality of the questions. There's certainly nothing wrong with yes or no questions, but I think it shows much more. It just shows so much more of an interest, and there's potential for more depth in a relationship and connection when there are, open-ended questions.
The word is curiosity.
Yeah, for sure. Another thing I would say is try to be open. It's tough, especially for someone that's been dating for a long time, and cynicism could set in, and being self-protective or saying, I'm not going to share until I know I can trust the person. What I would just humbly suggest is just to, you don't have to be completely, open and just reveal everything, but just kind of, if it's kind of natural and organic to the conversation, just slowly reveal parts of yourself. Or if the conversation, naturally goes there, just add a little thought, see if that person responds and picks it up and go with that. I've been in situations where there's not really anywhere to penetrate. It kind of feels a lot of I'm talking, you're talking. It's, you know what I'm saying? And I don't get a sense at all of who a person is. It's kind of like listing off facts about a person.
So can you give us maybe an example?
So an example would be someone who says, oh, I see in your profile that you exercise a lot. Do you exercise a lot? Let's say that person had something happened and they were unable to exercise more recently. That was my situation. And so I revealed something that had happened that made it a little bit more difficult more recently. I didn't go into it at depth, but I revealed a little bit, which could have given the opportunity for someone to inquire or to show empathy. But that would just be an example I'd give.
Okay, so once you do open up a little, you'd like some feedback, you'd like some recognition that you shared something.
Yeah.
And you're looking for some kind of feedback on that, maybe a deeper question. If
Yeah, perhaps I think people
share a little bit, then the person should take that up and examine what was just shared.
Oh, I love that, because it sounds like what you're saying is, you know, when you're opening up and being a little bit vulnerable, you're now hoping to get some feedback back, some reassurance, either some empathy or them sharing maybe a vulnerability back.
For sure.
To kind of acknowledge that you shared that. Oh, that is such an excellent point. I love that.
I mean, intimacy, I don't think is easy. It's not an easy, it's a vulnerability, it's risk, it takes courage. I know that for me, when I share something, if the other person acknowledges it, even to say, oh, wow, that's difficult, or oh, wow, that's amazing, or they add something, it makes me feel more comfortable and trusting that I can reveal more as time goes by.
Right. So it sounds like either they could share a similar situation they were in, or if they didn't have a similar situation, maybe they could say they know of somebody who went through that, or they could share some empathy, or maybe just, you know, kol hakavod for sharing that, or, you know, good job that you were able to overcome that challenge. Just some kind of, you know, uplifting words or some sort of empathy, or relating by sharing a similar experience that they or someone else went through.
Okay, next point.
I would say to be, if you have something, if there are nice things that you have witnessed with that other person, to be genuinely complimentary, with a caveat, not to focus on the physical attributes, but rather somebody's qualities and internals, you know, their internal qualities. If somebody is very articulate, you could, you know, to say like, oh, I noticed, you know, you seem very intelligent and articulate, or I like how close you seem to be with your family.
I love that one because that's my favorite dating tip, Heather. And this is what I call it. See it, say it, connect. Don't keep compliments in your head.
And keep it in there.
Don't keep something good that you recognize in the other person in your head. I call see it, say it, connect, especially if you're not touching during a relationship. You have to build those invisible strands of
Absolutely.
So you're looking at this person and you think, wow, okay, this is the classic example. The guy tipped the waitress really nicely. And you don't just say, you don't keep it in your head, you say, oh, you look like I saw what you tipped the waitress. That is so generous of you to recognize how hard she worked. It's not just the compliment, wow, I like that you gave a big tip. No, I like that you gave a big tip because it shows how generous you are. You're seeing the greatness in the person and you're saying it, and that builds connection because everybody wants someone who gets them.
Yeah, we want to be seen. Like there's certain things I want to be known and seen for. And if that person is able to mirror that back to me, I'm like, wow, they get me. They see me.
Yeah. Right. They noticed and appreciated both.
Yes.
Okay. Sure. Beautiful. Thank you.
These are great tips so far.
Next one.
Okay. Another one I would say would be, and this is, I would say, one of the most challenging and I find most common issues, things that women would like to see more of is emotional intelligence, which I know is a big buzzword. It's a lot of different, there's a lot of research that's been done. A lot of therapists have talked about it. A person can research it online, but it's basically a person really getting to know him or herself, developing a self-awareness, because that's important for emotional intelligence, working on empathy, working on emotional maturity, working on a certain stability. To me, I think that is, for a lot of women, that's the number one, I don't like to use the word complaint, but something they would like to see an improvement in their relationships.
How does a guy, so most of our tips today are for the guys, just to make this clear. Heather, how does a guy facilitate that?
It could be therapy, it could be reading. It's getting in touch with a person's feelings. What do I really feel? Well, that's interesting that word came out. Really being introspective, wanting to work through the challenging things to get to what motivates a person, being able to be emotionally present to another person, being able to develop empathy for another person. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it, and there obviously it's a spectrum, but emotional intelligence creates connection at a much deeper level. I think it's an invaluable skill.
Heather, I know you like to date divorced guys because they have some practice being married. They know how to be married. Would you say that the guys who have gone to therapy after a divorce have developed more of this emotional intelligence, or you've seen it all? What have you seen?
So men generally don't say, hey, I've been seeing a therapist. So I can't really speak to that. And I think it also depends on the type of therapy and therapist they've had. I think there's a little bit more in general awareness. I don't think that necessarily means that a person has a high EI, emotional quotient.
Mm-hmm.
I think it comes more naturally to certain people. I think it really just, more than anything, a person has to really want it and be willing to open themselves up to it and be courageous. But I can't speak to whether with a therapist or without, if it's any better.
Okay, how does a guy show emotional intelligence on a date?
Ooh, you're really asking me questions. Well, for one, and I know this is a common thing, if I share something, what I would like to hear, and obviously this is just me specifically, is if I share something, for example, let's say something that was not easy to share, what I would hope is that he can hold space for me, which means I'm not looking to solve it. I'm not looking to relate and tell you how I went through something similar, but you're there and you're present to me, and even if you don't agree with it, but you're validating me, you're trying to relate to where I'm coming from. That's like a whole different thing than saying, oh, I went through this, and then that person makes it about them and brings the subject onto themselves. I don't know if that's clear.
Kim, anything?
I was just thinking there's probably a lot of free videos on YouTube about teaching this, a lot of books out there. There's so many articles, videos, books on, what women are looking for, how to connect with women, how to develop that EQ, because it can be developed, even, it can be learned. It can be increased. So there's just a lot of amazing resources out there if somebody wants to improve this.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Wow, next.
Actions and words should match.
More.
Trust, I've learned the definition of trust is that actions and words match up, and they match up over time. So there's a period of time. It's not just one time I say and do one thing that aligns, but that over a period of time, and actions and words match up. So if you say you're going to call, and if you can't, text them or let them know that you're not able to. I just feel like the more that a person, those things match up, the more that trust built and connection builds in a relationship.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Oh, that is such a good point, because I think that the more secure and comfortable a person feels in a relationship, the more comfortable they'll be to open up and be vulnerable. So that by somebody calling when they say they will is a great way to kind of make that person feel that they can trust them. And like you said, things come up and sometimes a person can't call when they say they will, no problem. But if you send a text message letting them know you hadn't forgotten, can we reschedule for this time? This is a great way to build trust in that relationship, which will hopefully enable a person to feel safer to open up.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Next.
for sure. I would say making time for one another. But it sounds like it should be, oh, it's an obvious one, but I think it's important, like, well, for sure, minimizing texting relationships. I feel like it can really go sideways there, and trying to, especially if a person's not long distance, to keep the phone conversation short and make a plan to meet soon. And if a person meets, to not have too much time, in between dates to go out again, to try to keep momentum. Because I've seen relationships that seemed great that just, I'm sure the two of you could attest to this, that fizzled out without that momentum.
Yes, Kim and I are big proponents of momentum dating, and I've made a half a dozen videos on momentum dating. You have to keep momentum. I love that you say that, and you have to prioritize the new relationships. So I just had a relationship go south, a guy in LA and a woman in North Carolina, maybe. And she said they had one conversation and then she wouldn't be available for 10 days. And then maybe they had a second conversation, and then she wasn't available for another 10 days. Okay, that's not going to work. She's not making him a priority. She's not really serious. There's got to be a time you can have a half-hour conversation. I mean,
Right.
This is long distance. You're not even getting dressed up to go out for 3 hours. So if you don't prioritize your relationship, the other person's going to know you're just really not ready to find someone and be serious about finding someone.
Heather, I was taking notes if you see me looking down, because you had such great things to say, so I could remember what to share as well. I think that you mentioned texting. I think texting is good for coordinating things, like when is a good time for us to speak on the phone? When is a good time for us to meet? Is it too late to call you now? But sharing deeper thoughts, sharing feelings, sharing ideas, it's best to do in person. If that doesn't work, Zoom is the next best. The next best after Zoom is a phone call. But at least in the beginning stages of a relationship, sometimes, I'm sure you've seen this too, Laurie, and Heather, you might have seen this as well, that texting too much too early on can sometimes have, some adverse effects sometimes. As you guys were saying, let's face it, time is our biggest asset these days. And if somebody makes the time for you, they're basically saying you are a priority.
Okay, we got to move on because we don't want to make this too long, else people won't watch it till the end. So next,
Okay.
Heather. Thank you.
Okay, I would say for some of the don'ts is minimize at a minimum, minimize discussion of ex-spouses, of people that you've dated in the past, of widow for people whose spouses have passed away. Like Laurie had said to you in a phone conversation, I think if it's germane to the conversation, I was married to my late wife for X amount of years, or I found that because of my previous marriage, I need someone who I think certainly speaking derogatorily and bad mouthing is it's a big turnoff to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. And I think the focus should really be on me and you right now.
So I tell people, I learned this from one of my clients. He says when he's asked about his ex-wife on the first date, he says, why would I talk about my ex when I have this beautiful young woman in front of me that I want to get to know? And personally, I don't think it's anybody's business to talk about your ex until you have an emotional connection with him, which means at least till the third, fourth date. And I think that nobody should answer questions they don't want to answer on a date. They can say, I understand your need or desire or curiosity to ask that question, but I don't think I'm going to be ready for that till maybe the fourth date. So if you wouldn't mind just waiting, I'll talk about my ex. I'm happy to talk about my ex. But right now, let's just get to know each other. And if you've done background checking, a lot of people in the front world are going to make calls and try and find out things. But I think people should get to know each other before they reveal things they're not ready to reveal. And I don't think it belongs in the first date discussion. But let me ask you, Heather, and let me ask you, Kim. I have a guy who's been divorced more than once. So all the women want to reject him, let's say, because he's been divorced more than once, and they want to know why. So I'm asking Heather, if you had a guy who was divorced twice, let's say, or 3 times, would you A, date him, and B, what would you have to know about that?
So for me, I can only speak for me, what other people are comfortable with. I can't speak to that. For me, in most cases, unless everything else really checked out, I would prefer someone that's been married once. I had one marriage and it was fairly short. It wasn't short, but it wasn't too long. So I'm most comfortable with someone that's once married. But again, if everything else lines up and they're, twice divorced, I would look into it a lot at that point.
You would look into it first. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
Sure.
I know Kim has things to share because she's got great ideas.
You know me so well, Laurie. I think that when people are trying to find out information about someone's previous marriage, the truth of the matter is, in halacha, people can't, when people are calling references, the reference can't share any negative information unless they have firsthand knowledge anyway. If they have secondhand knowledge, they can't share it. So, what I think, and also in addition to that complication is that so many times people only meet once or twice. And so because, so many dates get to stop at a first date or get to a second, we want to minimize how much private information is being shared about people out of respect to people. If it's been several dates, then we see that there might be real potential. But a lot of times people want to find out very private information about people before they've even spoken to them. And we don't even know if the other side is interested in them. And even if they are both mutually interested, it may stop after 1 date or 2 dates. So we want to minimize what kind of private information is shared. What we can do instead of trying to find out specific private information is have a Rav or a therapist or someone who knows them well reassure the caller that this is a person that's capable of being in a happy, healthy marriage. Because there's really no need, at least right away, to find out all the details of what went wrong. What the person's really calling for is reassurance that this is a person that's healthy and is capable of being in a happy, healthy marriage. And a person can get that reassurance without finding out all the details. I know of a Rav, when someone calls him to ask why why a previous marriage didn't work, he'll say, I can't say why, but I endorse this person as a candidate for marriage.
Kim, I think that is going to be one of the biggest takeaways from this video. I hope all divorced people will use that tip, which goes along with what Heather's trying to tell us also. And I think it's brilliant. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for what you both have shared too.
Okay, Heather, next.
I would say there's this new term, ghosting. Baruch Hashem, that has not been my experience, but I've spoken to a lot of people who have said, all of a sudden, they think they're communicating in whatever format, and then the person just is invisible, ghosts them. Mm-hmm. So what I would say is, if we're mature enough to get married, let's be direct. If something is not for us, these are skills we're going to need in our marriage anyway. Things are going to come up that we're not comfortable with or we disagree with. It's important to say in a respectful way, I realize we're not compatible, or I don't think this is going to work for me, or some version of that, and wish them well and say goodbye, as opposed to just disappearing and leaving a person hanging. I don't think it's proper to do that.
I think you said that great. And if you've had a relationship past 3 dates, it is appropriate, I think, for the person to own up and say, I don't think this is working for me. You can, if you have a matchmaker involved, ask the matchmaker to end it for you. But if you've already gotten to a certain place, it is nice to be a mensch and say it yourself. What do you think, Kim?
So I think the general rule of thumb is, two things. One is, like you said, Laurie, the sooner the shidduch ends, the more it kind of makes sense to have the shadchan end it. But the longer it's been going on, the more hurtful it might be if the person doesn't directly let the person know and instead uses the shadchan. The second general rule of thumb is that if the couple never used the shadchan from the beginning to relay information, you don't want to just bring the shadchan in to end it. Whereas if they had been using the shadchan from the beginning and it hasn't gotten too far along, it makes sense to also use the shadchan to relay the message to end things. But if you hadn't been using the shadchan to just bring her in or him in, just to end it, that might be hurtful.
Great. Okay. Thanks for bringing that up, Heather. Anything else?
Welcome. I would say, don't assume that you know what the other person feels or wants. And I understand the sensitivity of not wanting to tread on certain topics, but I think there's a way to bring certain topics up. And if a person has a healthy boundary, like you had mentioned earlier, say, you know what, I appreciate that. I'm not ready to talk about that, or something of that type. Because I think sometimes people try to be extra careful and then they don't ask questions and they don't show interest and they make assumptions about what the other person thinks or feels or wants.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little bit trickier though, because it depends on the person.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Kim, anything on that one?
What I was thinking, if somebody wants to find out about something that's sensitive, then I think that the best way to do it is for that person to bring up something about themselves that's vulnerable and sensitive, and then see if that person takes the hint and also shares something
Like an opening.
Yeah, because if the person shares first, then they know that the other person might feel more comfortable to share. So what I say is, first share, see if the other person shares a similar thing back. If they don't, you could try to ask once. And if they give a very short answer, take the hint that they don't want to elaborate, and then maybe wait, a few more dates to bring it up again.
Okay. Next.
I would say, at least for me, unless it's mutually agreed upon, date one person at a time. That means, to me, it's if I'm serious about getting married, I'm communicating with one person, I'm seeing one person, as opposed to, unless it's been mutually agreed upon, focus on one person at a time. It also can get very confusing when there's multiple, there's different feelings and different conversations.
Kim?
Oh, I have so much to say about this, but I don't want to take up too much time. Here's what I'll say. There's different opinions about this. I think nearly everyone agrees once you've arrived at about a third date, that you don't want to be accepting other offers. Some people say in the very beginning stages, it's okay, because even though it's not ideal, in an ideal world, people would only give one yes at a time. I think everyone agrees that's ideal, but sometimes a man will give a yes and the woman takes a week, 2 weeks, or even longer to respond. And he keeps only giving one yes at a time, and weeks or months will go by and he doesn't get a date. And so unfortunately, sometimes it becomes a necessity for a man to give more than one yes, unless he stipulates at the onset of his yes, I'm giving a yes for 3 days. But sometimes, and it's not intentional. Sometimes the woman doesn't even see that he approved her profile for days later. So in an ideal world, that would be ideal, but sometimes due to various factors, it's hard, practically speaking, for a man to do that. But I think, just to recap, nearly everyone agrees once it's reached a certain point, that's good to be exclusive. I think the other thing is, some people say the first 1 or 2 conversations or Zoom chats or dates is just to see if you even want to date each other. You know what I mean? It's like just to kind of see if this is somebody you want to date. But there's various different opinions. And the reason I bring this up is that I do think there's room to be done the chapsachos if you find out a man is giving more than one yes in the very early stages.
Right. So I'm in agreement with that, that you can maybe talk to two people at a time up till the third date, then you have to make a choice with who to go to. But if we want to build a relationship and get married, you have to really concentrate on one person, because you're going to build that relationship brick by brick and meeting by meeting and date by date and call by call. So yeah, you cannot date two people seriously for marriage at the same time. So thanks for bringing that up, Heather.
And if I was going to say, if you see real potential, there's no need to keep giving other yeses. If you truly see potential, there's no need to.
Yeah. Very good. Heather, anything more?
There were like two thoughts. I can just pick one if you'd like. Okay. I would say, don't lie about your age. I cannot state that more emphatically. I mean, I could, but I'm trying to.
Okay.
People can have shilas, but to me, you start a relationship on a lie. To me, Hashem is in charge. If I'm meant to be with this person, this is going to be my person. I just starting out a relationship, being deceptive. I'm
so
don't agree,
Heather. I'm so on board. In fact, Sayat Sinai now is doing something that they're putting a green check by the person's name if their age has been validated.
But an important thing about this, Laurie, to note is just because somebody doesn't have a green check does not mean they're not really that age. It could be they're going by their Hebrew name on their profile, but legally they're by an English name, or maybe for whatever reason, public records couldn't pull them up, or for whatever reason. In other words, if you see a green check, that means their age has been verified. But if you don't see a green check, it does not mean that they're not that age.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. But I agree with Heather.
How do you verify that? How is that validated? I'm just curious.
I thought that maybe people were sending in a copy of their license, but I'm not sure how they're validating. In fact, I was coaching a 61-year-old woman. No, she was 63 and it said 61. And she was so tired of other people lying about their age that she decided to send in her information. She wanted to have the green check. She wanted to be honest. She wanted other people to be honest. And I think a lot of people did get that advice that yes, you can lie for shidduchim. And honestly, I never understood it, but I'm not a great rabbi, so I can't really comment on it. I can just say I didn't really understand it, but there's all these supposed tshuvas out there that yes, you can lie about your age. So I don't know.
I would say if somebody does lie about their age and they really were told by a Rav to do this, then I do think there's room to give them the benefit of the doubt because they're following Das Torah. Even if it doesn't make sense to us or to some people, if they're acting in good faith and doing what their mentor or rabbi, who's a very well-respected Rav, tells them to do, then I do think, in my opinion, there is room to give them the benefit of the doubt since they were, doing what they thought was the right thing to do.
But at a certain point, they do need to disclose their age and not wait until they go to the license bureau to get their marriage license. I sure hope. Heather, what experience have you had with that?
I have been on dating websites where I've seen, I can't even count how many men that I know for a fact because I had dated them and they told me their real ages, that the ages on the websites could have been off by even 10 years.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was afraid of.
Yeah. It's in my personal experience, it is fairly typical.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends if they got support from a rabbi. A rabbi may not have said 10 years. Wow, that's a lot. Maybe they only got a hetzer to give 1 or 2 years, to take 1 or 2 years off.
I can't see too many rabbis giving men a hetzer to not tell the truth about their age. I think you're going to find it much more with women I think it's going to be much more with women. Why would a man have a reason to lie about his age?
I found in general with women, they'll say, I'm looking for some, I'm in my 40s. They won't say their age. That is more revelatory to me about what a person's actual age is than, I don't know of anybody who's lied. I'm sure there are women who have lied. I've never lied. I've had people accuse me of lying and saying that I'm 10 years younger than I am. And I'm like, you don't know women, because who's going to lie and say she's older than she is? I can assure you. But yeah, I've had that experience. But I mean, I think also it's more likely as a person gets older and they want more options that they do it. I'm not excusing it, but.
Right. Well, let's end on our summation notes. And I want to say that I know everybody out there is doing their best in the dating world. And I do think Heather brought up some great topics. Maybe not all of them were new for you, but it's good to be reminded. And it's good to just hear these things again about open-ended questions and being vulnerable and all these things that, oh yeah, maybe I should start doing that on my date. You know, like I really appreciate Heather being brave enough and bold enough to come on, make this video with us, and hopefully give, especially some divorced men, some ideas of how they might be better daters and better partners. Kim, any last words?
Heather, thank you so much for joining us. This was so
Thank you for
helpful.
the
I really
opportunity.
enjoyed hearing what you had to say. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I appreciate it. Thank
Heather,
you.
any last words?
Hatzlacha to everybody. Everybody should be matzliach. Everybody should be successful. What they've heard here should help them to find the one.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.